Now I've discovered what the problem is. All right, everybody out there in Soundland, you should be able to hear me now. I apologize. I forgot to turn the mics on. And so that should all be good at this point in time. So, I've discovered what the problem is. Yeah. All right, problem solved. On the So we've been having a great conversation, which you've not been able to hear, about Medicare fraud. Dave Yost was talking about the Cleveland Clinic, and the fact that the Cleveland Clinic was cheating a little bit, miscoding medical procedures so that they could make money on transgender surgery. That is pretty concerning, that they would do that. Jonathan stepped away for a minute, so I'm filling in. And on a Monday morning, things just were not quite clicking correctly, but we should all be good now. So, and there's a lot going on in Geauga County. I don't know whether you've heard about the most recent little challenge we have with the county commissioners and the renaming of a road based on a very sad and um, very sad situation where a young child died, but and their parents are requesting a name change. But one of our commissioners is trying to make hay with that and make a political situation out of it to get her. By the way, Jonathan, I figured out what the sound issue was with streaming, and
Now
so
I'm hearing it. I'm
yeah,
getting it double because I hadn't muted it in once. I can tell
yeah. So
to
it's
get the sound working.
that's all up and running now. So, but
Oh, good.
I don't believe we're streaming through the radio station. I've tried to go to directly to the live stream on the website, but in any case, we're up and running. The internet's stable now, so we're good for the rest of the next half of the program. So I was just talking about Dave Yost and the medical procedure. Plus, we've got a number of things going on in Geauga County. By the way, I'll be going to a planning commission meeting in the morning, and I'll be talking a little bit about NOACA at that meeting. But we have we're going to have a challenge in the
30
commissioners
seconds, 30 seconds.
in the commissioner's office on the topic of renaming a road based on the death of a young child. It was sad and all that. But when you start changing the names of roads, it
10 seconds, 10 seconds.
gets complicated. So.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Jonathan Broadbent, and Skip Claypool has figured out the technical issues he was having and has joined us. Welcome to the show, Skip. Seems like we've got things sorted out here. Thanks for bearing with us, everybody. We had some Monday morning sorts of issues. But drilling down again, and it does look like everything is up and running as it should be. It's interesting and very compelling to me that in this post from Bill DiPuccio, and again, that is somebody I recommend finding and following. He's got a really good head on his shoulders, very good mind, very good, clear posts, and he writes well. So under the category of America's founding principles, he's got two columns here. There are principles according to the founders, and then there are principles according to progressives. So, on the under the founders, we have rights are guaranteed, rights are granted by God, individual liberty, private property, equality under the law, presumption of innocence, limited government power, consent of the governed, e pluribus unum, which means out of many, one, federalism, which means states and federal share power, and civil discourse. In the right hand column, according to progressive, we have rights are granted by the state and society. And instead of individual liberty, we have control, regulate, and restrain. Instead of private property, we have confiscate and reallocate wealth. Instead of equality under the law, we have favoritism for protected classes. And under presumption of innocence, instead of that, we have oppressors presumed guilty, and instead of limited government power, we have unlimited government power. Instead of consent of the governed, we have rule of enlightened progressives. Instead of ir pluribus unum, we have society divided by race, gender, etc. Instead of federalism, we have centralized power, which means federal control, and that's getting alarmingly bad. It is getting horrible. When and Skip and I talk about this on the show regularly, we, our every instinct is to have representative government. If you don't like something, you should have somebody within government who you can go to and voice your concerns. If we don't have that, if your local representative feels that they are handcuffed and completely unable to address the concerns of their constituents, and they turn to the state and the state says, well, there's nothing we can do about it because we have to follow the edicts and commands of federal government. And then I'm going to add another layer to that. Much of what we experience as government isn't actually elected government. They're bureaucratic agencies that have spawned out of government. So that's a little side note there. And the final thing, instead of civil discourse, we have silence opposing voices. All of this is playing out right before us. We have platforms, social media, and even news channels. We saw a few years ago when various news channels started to surface fighting for traditional journalism and things like it. We had One America News, Newsmax, and others, and even Epoch Times, which is a great newspaper that I enjoy, were all came under attack and deplatformed. So it's very hard to find them, forcing people to only subject themselves to the far left propaganda of agencies like CNN and MSNBC. Verifiably, we can point to much of what they do that is not factual. It is untrue. It's propaganda. So that's the final point that's made there, silence opposing voices. We're seeing it happen real time in the United States, and I suggest that more of us should be outraged by that. Right, Skip?
Yeah, it's a little scary, and I'll give you two examples. First of all, look at what's going on in California right now, where they're sending out a mail ballot to every home, and that includes illegal aliens in California. Everybody can vote. All you need is something with your name on it, and then you can vote. That is corrupt, and that is from people who have lost the basic principle and understanding of what this country was founded on, and that is to protect liberties and to protect us from authoritarians. California's communist Marxist governments are authoritarian. Whenever anybody promoting socialism, and I saw this on Nextdoor, that everybody was saying, let's go downtown to the Pride Parade and celebrate. Well, I'm not going to go there, but and to celebrate this goofiness that's going downtown in Cleveland, and this is coming from the Socialist of America. That was Socialist of America. So I commented on Nextdoor because I couldn't tolerate that nonsense, and so and tried to confront this whole socialist. Anybody that supports socialist, communist, Marxism is supporting a authoritarian type of government. That's what we fought at the beginning of our country. It was a king, it was an authoritarian, and authoritarians tend to set the rules that hurt the minorities. When I was down in Columbus testifying before the state house, there was a representative, Brennan, that asked me the question. You know, Cleveland's got 60% of the population. Why would you want to disenfranchise 60% of the population? And my response to him was, look, the current configuration is like a democracy. The democracy means, a pure democracy means the majority get to hurt the minority. The reason we have a republic is because there's balance and representation, and all peoples are have an opportunity to be treated fairly. And that was my response to him, kind of. And so that's the reason you don't have this nonsense going on with these large populations of people who have no clue what protecting liberty is all about, protecting freedoms, and having a system that works in fairness to all and balance based on law, based on the Constitution, so on and so forth. And so that gets to be the challenge, and that's what you were talking about earlier. Was that there's different approaches to government and governing, and that when you have a republic, you have a more fair system. Is it perfect? No, but it is a more fair system than a democracy or an authoritarian like they have in Iran, where they have um, a religious um, authoritarian system set up. And so our founders tried to set up a system that had checks and balances in it, although the checks and balances don't appear to be working right now, and which is very concerning to me. We have things like Cleveland Clinic and fraud because we don't have a system set up that will safeguard us against that kind of ridiculous stuff that's going on. But that's because you have a government Medicare, Medicaid system. And anytime you have government, people are going to cheat the system because it's so easy to do. Government doesn't care. They give away your money. They don't care how they spend your money. And so it's easy for the government. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to work. That's the reason we've got to watch our trustees. We've got to watch our commissioners. We've got to watch our state representatives because it's so easy just to make decisions to pitter away people's money. So anyway, that's my rant for today. And
Yeah,
it didn't cut me
socialism is
off.
great.
And it didn't cut me
Socialism
off.
is great until you run out of other people's money.
And we are running out of other people's money. Look at the debt we have across the country. By the way, in Ohio, we're fantastic. Eliminate property tax. Unfortunately, we're going to delay for another year because people kind of dropped the ball and didn't get the petition signed. We must eliminate property tax because it is the most corrupt, easily manipulated system or mechanism for collecting our money to do services. There's much, much better, more transparent approaches to doing that. And our elected officials that want to promote that system are doing that in self-serving for self-serving reasons. Either they're too lazy to figure out another way to do it, or they're too corrupt because it's easy for them to cheat the system. And
It's
so,
much more the latter. When you have property taxes, it's so cloudy and murky, it's so easy to hide the confiscation of millions and billions of dollars the, through property taxes than other forms of taxation, which are much more clear. There is that, by the way, Brian Massey, who is spearheading the movement in Ohio to abolish property taxes, is my co-host on Ohio Political News. We did cover that last night. We actually had a press release on Friday morning last week. I actually toggled over after the show Friday with Frank Kavanaugh, host Frank Kavanaugh. I toggled over and we hosted that press release relating to the movement to abolish property taxes. The show last night, it came up again with co-host Brian Massey. We also, you may want to go and find that Ohio Political News on Rumble and Facebook. Or also on other platforms, those tend to be the two largest. Find Ohio Political News. We had Ray Simon last night, who is an amazing artist. He has art exhibits all over. He has some in the Library of Congress in Mar-a-Lago. Some of his art is up currently in the White House, and he's an incredible artist and a great patriot. We also had Dustin Russell join us yesterday. He is part of the Cuyahoga County Central Committee. He made comments on uh, relating to an issue that I'll get back to a little bit later. And also Jeff Skinner joined us last night talking about moves to try to get everybody voting in Ohio to have to show a form of photo ID. We're coming up on a break. Don't forget you can join the program, join in the conversation at Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube, or by dialing in 440-946-9468. You can tune in WINT Radio 101.5 FM and 1330 AM. We'll come back with more on the other side of the break.
Mike's off, mic's off.
okay, I've been experimenting with setting up channels on TVs to be able to watch our live streams, and it works pretty doggone good. Facebook, YouTube, or not Facebook, but YouTube and Rumble both have channels. Facebook, you have to do it through a browser, so it gets a little bit more complicated. But just a heads up to our community, unless we get some sponsors here very, very quickly, we're going to have to pull the plug on the radio station. And so I'm just putting the word out. If anybody has anybody you know that wants to sponsor this program, and by the way, there is a payback for that because we're going to be advertising their business and hopefully driving business to them. So it's not like we're they're gifting us money. They're investing their money to be able to accomplish something. But so we'll be doing just pure streaming if that happens, and we'll have to change our approach a bit. So that's the reason for experimenting with the Rumble channel on TVs and stuff. If you've got a Roku, it's very easy to add a channel. On many smart TVs today, you can add channels, and Rumble and YouTube particularly, YouTube is always there.
30
Rumble's
seconds, 30
sometimes there.
seconds.
So
Yeah, good call. It's growing in popularity. We do that. I dig it.
Ten seconds, 10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and myself, Jonathan Broadbent. Something came up during the break that I want to highlight for you. One of the new things for Voice of Geauga, we are streaming to live stream services like YouTube and Rumble. If you have a streaming device or smart TV, something like a Roku, you can add those channels. I know we've done it in our household. We have Rumble and YouTube channels. You can go there, and anytime you want, you can watch pre-recorded episodes like this one or stream it real time. Let it run in the background as you get your coffee ready and make breakfast in the morning. You can tune in and listen to Voice of Geauga, which brings me to a key, very important point. We're looking for community. We're looking to build community, which means sponsors, donors, and advertisers. If you go to Voice of Geauga and scroll down just a bit, there's opportunity there, very much like a streaming service or anything else you might commit some money to because you care about it, because you believe in it. You can go to voiceofgeauga.com, scroll down. There is an opportunity to give. There is an opportunity to subscribe. Those are two different things. Please give generously as you are able, but also, very importantly, we're looking for local businesses that want to advertise. We hit a lot of households, a lot of cars and people driving around, radios in places of business. I talk to people all the time, almost daily. It seems I run into somebody who says, "Oh yeah, Voice of Geauga. I listen to that on the radio. We tune in at my office." Those are ears that your local business could be getting. It could be hitting those ears and promoting goods and services for local businesses. And of course, we have the newspaper. That paper goes out to over 43,000 mailboxes in Geauga County. It is an exceptionally good value to help get the word out about your business. So those three opportunities, the radio, the podcast, and the paper. And of course, anybody out there who is interested in keeping this show going, please do hit Voice of Geauga and help support this show and more like it. Back to the subject at hand, we're talking about our value system. And to me, you know how it is. If you're on social media at all, and I do try to limit it, but I find myself on there reading, promoting, trying to keep up with current events and where people's attitudes and opinions are. But this Bill DiPuccio, it really jumped out at me. It's a great post among many from Bill DiPuccio having to do with our founding principles. And as we hear the steady drumbeat of ridiculous comments like no kings, and let's be clear, if you look at Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, or the current rules and regulations in place and the system of government and the mandates, corruption, and edicts coming from places like Minnesota, who's shifted significantly in the direction of whatever you want to call it, Marxist values, that is much more tyranny. That is much more king-like behavior than the current administration. The current administration actually is forcing our rights and our civil liberties back into the forefront, forcing and pushing for our First Amendment rights, our Second Amendment rights, and a return to constitutional values and a return to law and order. Those are things we should be advocating for. And in this reverse, inverse, upside down world, the left seem to pitch good as bad, up as down, and the reverse of everything. It's just madness. Right, Skip?
Well, yeah, and what's really crazy to me is people becoming numb to it. I mean, Gavin Newsom destroyed San Francisco. Homelessness went through the roof. The budget went through the roof, and people in San Francisco and California elected him governor. Oh my gosh, the stupidity of that. I don't even understand that. I mean, we're becoming numb to corrupt, incompetent government. And it shouldn't be that way, but unfortunately it is. Even at the local level, sometimes we just accept things because it's too much work or too much time or whatever to try and correct a bad situation. Look at Karen Bass. She almost burnt down Los
And it
Angeles.
looks like we've lost Skip. I think it's been a little while since I've used the analogy a friend gave me some time ago. We were talking about taxation and how people end up underwater just because of not just taxes, because taxes, well, for the most part, until you get into things like property taxes, they're fairly straightforward. But there are things on top of taxes, like all the constant parade of fees and incessant parade of fines and enrollment fees and those sorts of things that you have to pay. If you start, like I have, to consider all of them a form of taxation. So if you have a car in Pennsylvania, for instance, you have to have these two different stickers on your windshield, and you have to pay to update those. In Ohio, and certainly here in Geauga County, you have to update the sticker on your license plate. And in order to do that, you have to go in and get an e-check. And it used to be that the e-check would cost you something. And now, more and more, as you drive around, you may get something in the mail that suggests that you need to pay an extra $135 for having driven down Fairmount downhill, and where it's suddenly marked at 25 and you're doing 35. Um, those sorts of things, if you just lump them all in the category of taxation because you're losing your money, you're giving your money to government, then you end up with runaway, overpaid government that becomes abusive. And I believe that that's where we are. We've arrived at that place. And using that analogy, and if for our listening audience, imagine me, I'm just sort of holding my hand up roughly about my lip just below my nose. If you imagine that's a water level, then there are people at that water level who are very close to drowning. And if you raise the water level just a little bit, then more and more people, depending on the height, they succumb and drown. They drown in debt. And when you have to pay fees, fines, penalties, taxes, and this just oppressive regime of a parade of fines and fees and penalties, the analogy, I want to sort of sum it up as briefly as I can, but the analogy is the taller people are people with more money. Short people drown the soonest. Those are people without much money, without much reserve to rely on. And we have a steadily increasing taxation every year, every quarter. And again, next year, I'm told by Brian Massey, we face yet another property tax increase, a property tax valuation. Not exactly sure which counties that pertains to, but it's fair to assume that next year, when property taxes go up another 18 to 25% in various places, more people will drown in that debt. More people in government will be happy because their $180,000 a year salary plus golden parachute benefits will turn into $210,000 a year. And then they'll get a free car or something. So if you work for government, they love it. They just eat it up. They can't get enough of it because then they can also get their spouse and their brother-in-law and their college buddy and their kids all into these government jobs, all making 90,000 or 140,000 or 200,000. It seems like great stuff to them, but it's destructive. We're coming up on the conclusion of this show. Thanks for bearing with us at the beginning as we got things up and running. A little bit of case of the Mondays, but it turned into an interesting discussion. We hope you agree. We're going to be back tomorrow morning. I believe Skip will be on the road. He is heading out to a planning commission meeting and the commissioners meeting tomorrow morning, Tuesday. Tune back in as we continue the conversation. Try to keep tabs on local government. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.